Chat, I have to prepare for the next video. I have to prepare for the next video. Okay, I'm prepared. Oh shit, I forgot that he got fancy, chat. I forgot that Carl got fancy. Did you guys remember? Look, some of you may be new here. Some of you guys may be new here. This is not actually Sargon of Akkad. This is actually a trash can. And I know they look very similar. And sometimes people get spooked, but it's not the real Carl. It's not the real Carl. It's just, he's just a fancy fella, okay? Why aren't you social distancing? Well, Carl can't catch it. Because again, he's not actually real. He's just a sex doll / a trash can. I know it's surprising. There's the real Carl. This is actually the real Carl. There's subtle differences. If you look at real Carl, you may notice slouched, not standing up. My Carl has perfect posture at all times. Okay, you may look over here and see a broken man with strangely sized forearms. Not a forearm to be seen. Can't be strangely sized if you don't have them. Right? Can't be strange if you don't have them. You might see a man whose mug looks like a fleshlight. It looks like a fleshlight. However, as you notice, this just is a fleshlight. Very different. You can fuck this. So, yeah, totally different. Totally different. We're not impeaching on anyone's brand or anything. You cut off its arms? No, that's how it came. That's how it came. That's surprising. It's uncanny. So anyway, we have Carl here. Carl here is gonna tell us the origins of intersectionality. There's no way. I have described intersectionality to Carl to his fucking face before, and he just doesn't understand it, or more likely, he's unwilling to understand it. There's a lot of things that Carl does wrong, namely everything. So it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to pick any one thing we like. So here's another serving of Sargon of Akkad. In his really fucking... Why is he so corny? They're lotus eaters. We're the lotus eaters. Yes, Sargon of Akkad and the lotus eaters. Yes, we'll have much knowledge. Much knowledge to give you. Fucking... It's so self-wanky. It's so weird. Look. Hey, look. You come here, I'm going to tell you stuff that's true. But also, I'm not going to sniff my own farts while I do it. That's a big difference between lefties and righties. Now, don't get me wrong. There's lefties that do that. There's lefties that do that all the time. There's also tankies that do that all the time. There's one back there. You can see the bottom of his face. That's a little mopping for you right next to that cobby there. But, Carl does it really, really way too often. Lotus is opium. You sniff my farts. That's true. That's true. All right, here's Carl saying words. We're not going to like them.
My favourite newspaper published an article about Kimberly Crenshaw, the lady who coined the term intersectionality. Oh. And they gave us some fantastic information from the horse's mouth about the origins of the term and the, I guess we'll call it, lens, the philosophy of intersectionality. And I really think it's worth sharing with you because it's really important to understand the mindset of the people who are espousing this worldview and why The Conservatives in the UK and Donald Trump are actually in open opposition to this now. And in fact, this is one of the reasons that this article was done and this interview was made. Because as you can see there, Kimberly Crenshaw, the woman who revolutionized feminism and landed at the heart of the culture wars, from police brutality to sexual harassment, the lawyer fights to ensure black women's experiences are not ignored. So why are her ideas being denounced? The easy answer is her ideas are being denounced as racist because she herself is a racist.
There goes the hat. Oh, jeez. I don't know what his deal is. Yes, I do. I do know what his deal is. I lied to you guys. I just lied out loud. The deal is he is on that grift shit. That's what the deal is. The deal is that he is always prepared for a good old grift. But wow. Apparently Kimberly Crenshaw is racist. Let's see how it works. The person who's the idea of intersectionality, and again, he's been taught this before. I've literally said it to him myself. Intersectionality is just understanding that in any area, and this includes straight white men, hi Carl, you and me, any area where there is marginalization, you can use each other's separate experiences to gain a semblance of empathy for one another's struggle and work together towards common goals that would help both of your problems. A great example of this is like the intersectionality between drug addiction and just being a black person, right? Where the drug war affects you both differently. I mean, there's also obviously crossover. There's drug addicted black people, and there's but if you're only black and you don't do any drugs, and then there's drug addicted people. The black community is often, as we've talked before, over-policed due to a series of systemic issues, but the drug war is pretty much on black people's doorsteps and Hispanic people's doorsteps, mostly black communities, though, because they're a bigger population. And you can use that experience of the drug war negatively affects me because of any reason, and then work together to understand that, like, while we may not have the same problem, we have the same answer. And it's stuff like that, just general equality stuff. Like anytime someone's rights get expanded, marriage rights, for example, it helps everybody. Anytime someone's rights get expanded to, I don't know, be in Congress or something or have a vote. We're past some of these things, but they still come up. Like Roe v. Wade's a great example of bodily autonomy and what should or should not be allowed, right? It's not just feminism, but it's definitely intersectional. And feminism is part of that from time to time. So like I don't know, I genuinely do not understand if you steel man intersectionality and you understand it at its basic principle, whether or not it can be pulled off by human beings the right way every single time is a totally other topic. I think we do a pretty good job. But just the idea of like, you have a problem, I have a problem, let's work together to solve that problem because it helps both of us in the long run. How is that bad? How is that a bad thing? It doesn't make any sense. Carl has been on this shit since Gamergate. He's been on the same bullshit since Gamergate. It doesn't make any fucking sense. We get out of here. There's a specific piece of wheat in my face. There we go. Oh yeah, last time we brought these down, it was really helpful. We're the corn nun now.
In a big volume that I actually don't have in the office with me, called Critical Race Theory, a collection of the most influential essays,
oh Jesus,
of that sort, compiled by Crenshaw herself, she writes a nice big foreword in which she explains that the purpose of intersectionality and critical race theory particularly is the raising of racial consciousness. Now, one might say, that sounds bad. That sounds like the sort of thing that the Nazis did. One
might say that if they're an idiot, This is not what the Nazis did. The Nazis did not have racial consciousness. In fact, they had quite the opposite of that. They had racial superiority on their side. They thought they were superior. They weren't conscious of racial struggles and trying to mitigate that problem. The fuck are you talking about? Like, you're absolutely so dumb. That is not what it is.
The Germans. And you'd be right.
It's so funny. We're less than 90 seconds in, and he's already Godwin's lawed this. Surprise.
That's exactly it. Raising racial consciousness is the very root and heart, the beating heart of racism.
It's not.
And that's what Kimberly Crenshaw is promoting.
Which
is why people like myself, people who are individualistic liberals, look at her and think, massive racist.
Individualistic liberal. Are you saying to me, Carl, that you are incapable of viewing things from a systemic point of view? It doesn't make me think that you're very smart. It makes me think that you're kind of dumb. If you can't understand that while everyone can be an individual, we also work in tandem with one another, ignoring the connections between one another and ignoring how the system of society tends to work is just, it's like, it doesn't make you this like thinker that gets to be a lotus eater. What it makes you fucking just dumb. It just makes you ignorant, like on purpose, because it's uncool to you. It's uncouth. You don't like how it feels. Like, what?
And she shows us this literally in the first paragraph. It's actually kind of comical to see the way that they view themselves.
Let's see it.
And what's interesting are the, dare I say, intersections of how this matches in with other momentous political events that are carrying on here.
Okay.
They say, it was October 1991, and Anita Hill was testifying against Clarence Thomas.
Okay.
At the judge's U.S. Supreme Court confirmation hearing, Hill, his former aide, claimed he had sexually harassed her. Right. Kimberly Crenshaw was assisting Hill's legal team and felt dejected and exhausted. After she left the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. that day, she saw a group of African Americans, mostly women, gathered at the bottom of the steps in a prayer circle. She let out a sigh of relief and walked towards them.
Is that racist? I don't understand.
What must she have been thinking?
What misshapen thinking? What? I don't understand. Please illuminate me, Carl. Can anyone find, before he gives an opinion, what's the problem with this right here? Well, what must she have been thinking? But either way. But like, what?
I see a group of black people, mostly women, and she must have been thinking something like, they have my skin color, therefore they must feel as I do. They must think as I do.
Literally, the paragraph underneath this says what she thought. I thought, oh, thank God, a place where we can go and embrace each other because this is a struggle.
Now,
she says it right there.
I would consider that to be...
She says it right there.
...of racism.
It says it right there.
Quintessentially racist.
Carl, I don't mean to interrupt, but it says it right there.
Philosophically like me,
Carl,
emotionally
stop.
like me,
no.
And therefore I can...
This is like talking to Carl in real life, by the way. It's exactly the same experience. Carl.
Just do as, in fact, she says
Carl,
in the next paragraph.
Thank you.
I thought, oh, thank God, a place where we can go and embrace each other because this is a struggle.
Yes.
Now, I assume that she means being around white people is a struggle.
What? I assume this is because she means being around white people is a struggle. If only you had read further. What? What are you talking? I assume. Just read it. She literally explains what the struggle was. Is he going to read this?
And having seen a group of black people, she thinks, great, I can go over to this group of black people.
That's not what she's saying right here. She's literally not saying that.
And be accepted and be embraced because I am also black and they are black and therefore all the black people will be together. Again, this just strikes me as racism. But anyway, it was the day before Thomas's confirmation and she felt the future of the civil rights movement was on the line. I think really the civil rights movement began with the Republicans, and I thought Thomas was a Republican. So,
oh, he's one of those fucking idiots. First of all, civil rights does not mean slavery is not a thing. That's not what civil rights movements are. Okay? The civil rights movement in general is about is about having civil rights.
Good call, baby bird.
After the fact. X-T gifted 5 tier 3 subs like a fucking boss. Thank you very much. You're very kind. Dread Pirate, the Arrow Sea, Quest Hate, Galulers, and Yuyito. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. That's super kind of you. That's expensive, and I love you deeply. 5 tier 3ers.
Baby bird. Good call.
Just beautiful. So, anyway,
Good call, baby
this is not civil rights. Like, Republicans didn't start civil rights, and then after that, there was literally a party switch. I don't know why we have to talk about this all the time. Why do they always ignore the fact that there was a party switch? I don't know why they ignore the fact that there was a party switch, but it happened. It happened. Abraham Lincoln's Republican Party is not what it was or is now. It's just not a thing. Let's see. Is there a fast way to describe this to people? How did the switch happen? Oh, maybe that's a great way to do it. No. It's just not easy to talk about. It's so much more complex than this. And it's just really hard to give you a rundown. Oh boy. A lot of it had to do with FDR. I don't know. It's just a lot of stuff. The Southern strategy happened later after the party switch, but yeah, I don't know. It's just, I tell you what, maybe one day we'll focus on that so we can all discuss it and maybe we can whittle it down together to make it more digestible. So we can just hit it on its good spots real quick. Boom, 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 boom in a conversation. Because this comes up so often. But I went to school for history, so I'm thinking about it, again, with all these systems involved, where FDR wanted this New Deal, and then the Republicans were like, we don't want a New Deal, and then FDR's like, we should do the New Deal, and then there was also, like, then they're like, we don't like big spending. He's like, why? We're literally going to help everybody, like, oh, man. Anyway. Let's have Sargon not be able to read. Let's do that. This is the video. Sargon unable to read the video. Tucker White, thanks for the 100 biddies. TJ Kirk is a great crash course of the party series. The episode Deep Fat Fried. Everyone should check it out and learn more. We could. Batty Bell, thanks for the 4 months.
Where the civil rights movement is going wrong here, I think really,
yeah, Bull Moose Party had a lot to do with it.
It's the end of the Democrats' involvement in the civil rights movement that's on the line, isn't it? But when she reached the group, she saw that they were wearing t-shirts proclaiming their support for Thomas. She watched in dread as they sang songs of praise and called Hill a Jezebel. Quote, it was like a horror film. You think you're
Cryptic Gabriel, thanks for the 15 months.
safe, but it turns out that the people you're running to are actually infected with whatever you're running from.
Yeah.
That's mad. I just find that mad.
You find it mad. Ugh. Look, I don't know why you would find it mad that Kimberly Crenshaw, I want to call her Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw was upset that a bunch of black women were not supporting a black woman in a situation that is, again, it doesn't really have a ton to do with the black, part of it, except in this is part of intersectionality. Clarence Thomas is a conservative. He is a black man, yes, but he is a conservative. Conservative ideologies typically, historically, almost always negatively affect black communities. On top of that, he was said to have been sexually improprietous toward Anita Hill, who is a woman. She happens to also be black. And then so you have this again, this intersection of, well, this political figure that harms us does a harmful thing towards women that women face every day, sexual harassment, right? And it just happens to be both those things at the same time. It means she was sad to find out that people that should empathize, that ought to empathize with the idea of the negative experience of being sexually harassed by a man in the workplace and then being dragged through the mud when you come to light with that, and on top of that, the political implications of allowing him to be confirmed. How do you not understand that as anything other than, it's not racism, it's just literally understanding the context of people's lived experiences. You can't make them un-black, so they're going to have black experiences. And when conservatism harms black people and that's their experience, they're going to maintain, like, it's just a thing that they're going to maintain. How in the world? It's not fucking surprising that most black people vote Democrat, even though, and I'll be the first to say that, not even the first, I'll be among the absolute horde of people that are also saying this at the exact same time. We all cross the finish line together in unison, comrades, because we all agree that the Democrats aren't great, right? They're not great, but they have a lot of people in the Democratic group that could be great and advocate for great things. AOC, Bernie, etc. Like, and then people like us who have to vote blue because it's fascism on the other side. And the only reason we vote blue is so that we can push more progressive things. And we are going to win over time. It's just how it works. We always progress. You progress towards the left every single time historically. It takes some time every once in a while, but it's never conservatism that wins. Because guess what? You can't conserve stuff when all the people who care about conserving it are dead. Because it's not your culture anymore. The culture has shifted towards the people that, guess what, are still alive. And that's just how it's always going to work. Jesus fucking Christ. And the fact that black men were cheering, which is when she realized the struggle between black men and black women was different, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's just nuts. Just nuts.
Obviously presupposing that all black people think alike and they're on the same team, and if they're not, they are, quote, infected with something. They are diseased. How is this not, though, the KKK's narrative? How is this not like the narrative of white supremacists, active white supremacists, who openly say, we are white supremacists, and we think all black people are the same, they're all, this, that, and the other. How is it not the same? And she's shocked to
You're friends with two white supremacists. How do you not know their rhetoric, man?
find, well, actually, here's a group of black people who are partisan and opposed to me on various political and ideological grounds. How does she not assume that there would be black people who think like this? I guess you would say that they were some variant of race traitors, to put it as politely as I can.
She's literally not saying race traitors, which means that even if she meant it, it means that there's a more polite way to say that. The fact that she didn't say that and you inferred it means, of course, naturally, logically speaking, there is a more polite way to say that. It's just, he's just so dumb. He literally can't even like try to like do a big internet ponage without being logically inconsistent.
But this, I think, gives us a fairly open view of how she sees the world. She thinks that all black people should be on her side, and presumably all women too, and that's where the intersections come in. But anyway, from this experience of having assumed a group of black people were on her side, only to find that they actually supported the black man that she was in opposition to.
I didn't explain that, by the way. Wow, I'm sleepy.
She says, as she walked away from them, she thought about how the case...
Isn't it weird? Okay, I have to cut him off. He's confused why a black person would be upset at other black people for supporting a black person. And he's like, well, this is obviously ridiculous. Like, what do you mean, bro? That's like highlighting the problem. You think that she's just going to choose people to side with because they're black. No. And you think that black people just agree with the black people. No. This is showing that obviously this color of their skin doesn't inform their quality of character. But you literally come away with it with the opposite of that. How? How? I don't understand.
Exposed the theoretical gap in the legal profession when it came to black women's lived experience. What?
What? As she walked away from them, she thought about how the case exposed the theoretical gap in the legal profession when it comes to black women's lived experience. How do you not understand that?
What does that mean?
What? What is it? I'll tell you. What do you really need? Does he not get to it?
The theoretical gap in the legal profession when it came to black women's lived experience. Yeah. So she, as a lawyer and a black woman, expected all black people to be on her side.
No! Ah! Ah! No. When it came to black women's lived experiences, you would think that because black women have a similarly lived experience, especially in this case, the women part. The black part is kind of the background of this because women in general face sexual harassment, especially as time moves backwards. You face more sexual harassment. Women face sexual harassment in the workplace from their male bosses quite often. This is a problem. This is a systemic problem that people have talked about for fucking decades. Hundreds of years this has been a known value, and she's saying that there's a gap between like what you would expect people to do in that situation, which is rally around the idea, the agreed upon idea, sexual harassment, sexual assault. That's a bad thing. Many of us have also experienced it, and if you haven't experienced it, you certainly know someone who has experienced it. Therefore, it follows that one would have empathy for that person and not side with the person that did the thing. And it's like, it is shocking when that happens because it turns out that Republicans don't necessarily, and conservatives in general, they don't necessarily ever vote based on ethics. They vote based on fear, and that is, I mean, it comes down to science. Really, they did studies that show that most conservatives make political decisions based on activity in the amygdala and stuff like that. Their amygdala reacts stronger than a left-leaning person's would, whereas a left-leaning person, I don't know where it was, maybe the frontal lobe or something, because we're big brain, big boys. It could have been also our fucking like Broca's area. I have no fucking clue, which is just the speech. But wherever ours was, it wasn't the amygdala. We are lizard brains. But they're more lizard brains. It's nuts. The orbital cortex, nice. So they base a lot of their politics on fear, which is a hurdle we have to help them get over. Because when they see people like me wearing the corn hat, or they see people like you, one of you people, you guys out there with your blue hair and your piercings and your tattoos and you being gay, or the audacity to question your gender and to come out with an answer that Sargon might disagree with or something. Whew! That shit scares people. It does, and I don't know why. I do not know why. But we all know it does scare them. So we have to figure out what the answer is to that question. How do we help them not be scared? And of course, there's some people that I don't want to help, and nor should you, because they're violent, they're trash, and they're cunts. And that's okay. They get to be those things. We're going to stay away from those people. There's some people that are reachable. The liberals, the middle people, the people that are like, I support the transes, but then goes on to dead name Elliot Page or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I support the gays. I just don't want them to get married. Call it something else. It's literally just more homophobia slapped on top of everything else. But regardless, those are the people we can reach. My mom was one of those people. My mom was one of those people who was like, she just didn't get it. She just did not get it. When Hannah was transitioning, she's like, cool, I'm for that. But why does dead name want to be that way? And I'm like, what? No. Don't say the dead name. Say the right one. She goes, oh yeah. Sorry. It's hard to remember. And it's like, it isn't hard to remember. Do your best. Please continue. And so I would just like, and Sarah would do it too. We would both be like, Hannah. It's not like her and Hannah ever interacted really, so it was not like super harmful. But also Hannah's dead name was a nickname, which was made it another layer of totally different. But you can reach these people now. My mom gets it. She gets it. She might not fully get it. You know what I mean? She may not fully understand gender and all the things that go into it and the broader concept. She's an old person, but all she has to do is understand that it's harmful to do this. It's nice to do that, and you should continue to be nice. And that's it. That's all we need them to do. We don't need them to know gender theory. This is the problem I think we get into. We get into these ruts of like information dumping on people. And it's like, have you ever played a bad D&D game or a bad video game where it's just like exposition a lot, or a bad movie? Just a lot of exposition. We don't need all that exposition. Tell me what I need to know. We can work out the rest later. Like, all they need to do is get it right. And then they can show their work, right? That's the big difference between people your age, right? And then people my mom's age. Once you hit 60, it's like a barrier. And it's not just a barrier because of like society and stuff. Shit happens with our brain when you get certain age. You kind of get very stuck in. Especially if you're not a person that's constantly learning. You're not in education or something. You're very stuck in your ways. And it's kind of a cop-out, but it's also kind of just how things work. So we just got to make baby steps. It's a boomer barrier. Yes. I really think now, unless it's your parent or something, your parent is closer to you, so you get to be like, if you specifically, not my parent, like, because I'm not trans, right? But like if you are trans or whatever it is, and it affects you directly because it affects me secondarily, then it's different, but. We should give leeway to the people that aren't there. Less neuroplasticity too. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Neuroplasticity is super important. Gray Fox, thanks so much for the 22 months, my friend. And then there's some people who are never going to get it, and that's okay. But like people like Sargon should get it. Sargon doesn't get it on purpose though, because he makes money.
And she found that some black people were not on her side, and this is a theoretical gap in the legal profession.
Ugh.
I don't think that many theorists have actually said that all black people have exactly the same opinions on things, and any of those legal theorists that did, like her,
not what she
I think
said.
the problem isn't actually the problem with the legal profession. It's their theoretical position on these things.
She didn't say that they had the exact same opinion on everything. She said this one opinion on one thing seems like a layup. That's a basketball term. Seems real easy to get right, don't you think? It's like the mask thing. You'd be surprised which people get that question wrong. It's like, hey, should we wear masks in a global pandemic when it's proven to keep the spittle on which the virus rides from getting out too far to other people? Scientifically proven to prevent it from spreading as effectively. Should we do the masks? And they're like, no!
Was just a gorilla.
Why? 'Cause it's my opinion. Who gives a fuck? If you went to a doctor and the doctor said to you, hey, if you do this, you're gonna bleed from your ass until you die. Would you do the ass bleed activity? I don't think so. I do not think so. It's the same way 9/11. 9/11's got this visceral, it was an explosion. We don't want the explosions to happen. An explosion, planes. That's not how things work. But COVID kills more people every day. And we just go, yeah, but I don't see it happen. So it's different. You're fucking stupid. Like, seriously, you're just fucking dumb. This is so weird to me, man. I don't understand that shit. It's just so fucking stupid. You're a doctor, and you have the gall to tell me medical advice? How dare you, sir? Or ma'am. Maybe it's Dr. Jill Biden.
But again, it seems to have been her racist assumption that she's projected onto the legal profession that reality has just demonstrated wasn't true.
No.
During the explosive hearing, The Guardian continues, televised and watched across the country, Hill, then a teacher at the University of Oklahoma's law school, spoke in great detail of her allegation that Thomas harassed her when he was the supervisor at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, yet he retained tremendous support, and in his infamous defense, he called the hearings a high-tech lynching. But that's only because there were, I think it was literally a dozen women who also worked around Thomas Clarence, who said they
Clarence Thomas?
hadn't seen anything of the sort. Nothing in their experience, not a rude comment, not a wrong, sly word or anything like that, had been directed against any other woman. And so these allegations were deemed as not credible.
Wasn't this in the fucking 90s? Am I nuts? When was Clarence Thomas? When was he put in? He was put in by maybe not the 90s. When was he? He succeeded Thurgood Marshall, right? Yeah, it was the 90s. Ha! Ha! 1991. I knew it. Because he came right after Thurgood. I don't know why you would do such a terrible thing. Thurgood Marshall was a good man. Clarence Thomas is not. Fuck Clarence Thomas. Fuck Clarence Thomas. Fuck no. Okay.
And with no evidence to support them. So it would seem that from a neutral, reasonable outsider's perspective, that I would suggest that I might be representing here, that justice was done. A false allegation was denied, and this seems to have been based on politically partisan lines because he was going to be confirmed to be a Supreme Court justice. And this
It was like 91 or 92 because he was living down the road from my grandparents at the time. Wow. That's interesting.
This was obviously an attempt to stop that. And
91.
Without any proof behind it, I can see why he would call it a high-tech lynching, frankly.
Frankly, I could... Frankly, wait, hold on. Sorry. Frankly, I like any excuse to use the word lynching whenever I can, because I like to be an edgy boy, but I also like to make money. So sometimes I say the N-word, but then people get mad at me, and then sometimes I say lynching, because it makes me feel like I get to say the bad stuff. Yes, so I agree. Oi, mate. Wait. Fish and chips. Tally-ho. I don't know what these fuckers say. I don't know what they got going on. You need to make a cut on the mouth so you can make them talk? Wow, that's a lot of work, isn't it? That's a lot of fucking work, isn't it? Spot a dick and all. Oi, mate. You want some spotted dick? I need a popsicle stick. That's what I need. I need a popsicle stick. Gonna donate more so you can get an intern? Thanks, man.
But what Crenshaw saw was that with feminists supporting
Why does he say Crenshaw?
Hill and anti-racist activists defending Thomas, twin calls for equality were being put into opposition against each other. The groups were weakening each other's movements instead of supporting each other's cause, and it was black women who paid a significant price.
Mm-hmm.
You mean the person who made false allegations against Thomas was a black woman, and...
Anita Hill. All right. Allegations. Wowzers. Hill agreed to take a polygraph test, While senators and other authorities noted that polygraph results cannot be relied upon and are inadmissible in courts, Hill's results did support her statements. Thomas did not take a polygraph test. He made a vehement and complete denial, saying that he was being subjected to, quote, a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks by white liberals who were seeking to block a black conservative from taking a seat on the Supreme Court. Wowzers. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Clarence Thomas published an autobiography in 2007 calling Anita Hill his most traitorous adversary and saying that pro-choice liberals who feared he would vote to overturn Roe v. Wade if he were seated on the Supreme Court used the scandal against him. He described Hill as touchy and apt to overreact, and her work as mediocre. In October 2010, Thomas's wife, Virginia, a conservative activist, left a voicemail at Hill's office asking that Hill apologize for her 1991 testimony. Anita Hill thought it was a hoax at first, but it turns out it wasn't. You know what I was going to say? I bet Clarence Thomas's wife is white. And what the fuck do you know? Turns out I was right. Wow. Surprise. Who's fucking surprised, bro? Okay.
Because other black women were supporting Clarence Thomas, this is meant to be some kind of contradiction. Yeah. I don't agree that what happened to Clarence Thomas was a call for equality. I don't know why you would frame it that way. I mean, if you were accusing someone of having sexually assaulted you, this would be a call for justice. A false one, it appears, given how things worked out. And for some reason, Crenshaw...
It's a false one? Hey, did you know that... Hey, if you were sexually assaulted by a Supreme Court justice prior to them being confirmed, if they are confirmed, you were no longer sexually assaulted. That's how the math works. That's how it happens. Did you know that? That's what he just said out loud as a smart person. Carl fancies himself a smart guy. Isn't that weird?
Has then dichotomized blackness with womanliness and decided...
No. Did not dichotomize blackness with womanliness. Literally said black women and used them as an intersection... Ugh. Jesus Christ. The person who coined the term intersectionality is not confusing blackness and womanliness. Carl. God damn it. God damn it, Carl.
There is some kind of conflict there based on her prior racial assumptions.
No.
But there isn't a dichotomy here. Neither of these things are actually based on being black or being a woman.
Okay.
Thomas was falsely accused.
All right.
He was then confirmed as Supreme Court Justice. Where's the conflict? He had supporters on both sides and accusers on both sides who were both black and women.
What?
This is not about, I don't know, this kind of activism that she's trying to portray.
What is it activism, bro?
Unless, of course, she is actually saying that identity activism, as in black or woman or whatever the identity is inherently opposed to the course of justice and justice itself being served is a form of oppression and division for these movements.
I just want to
Which
die.
I mean, I'm not saying that's necessarily what she's saying, but
Yes, you are!
honestly, that's kind of the impression that I'm getting.
I'm not saying she's saying that, but honestly, that's what I feel like she's saying. How? How can you say that out loud? I'm not saying she said the thing I said, but it really feels, honestly, like she's saying that. What the fuck is wrong with you, Carl? How do people fucking listen to you? What the fuck? It's so weird. I'm not saying she said that, but I am, though. Oh my god. I can't believe any of you have ever listened to this guy and thought, you know what? Fucking smart. Fucking smart. Why did you... Look, if you're an OG TBR fan, why did you tell me to get this fucking winner on the show? I was told by you guys he's smart, he's an atheist. Look at this. Look at this guy. You wouldn't catch me dead having Pa's face like this. Definitely not. Wouldn't happen. Jake, you need to rein in the talking trash bin of yours. True. Calm down.
The identity movements that she's been promoting are actually opposed to justice as we would understand justice. People getting what they deserve. As The Guardian carries on, for Crenshaw, who is now one of the most influential black legal feminist theorists in the US, Hill's case cemented her idea of intersectionality set out in 2 papers before the hearing. The idea suggests that different forms of discrimination, such as racism and sexism, can overlap and compound each other in just this way. But that didn't happen.
What? What?
If anything, you could have argued that maybe it was... I mean, maybe she... They don't state in this Guardian article, but maybe they're saying, well, Clarence Thomas was only accused because he was black and a man. That's obviously not where she's going with it, but the point is... she's making this up. There is no particularly like a non-intersectional reading of the circumstance sees this as just being normal and have justice having been done. At the time of Hill's case, Crenshaw was writing another paper called Mapping the Margins on the erasure of black women's history of being sexually harassed and abused. Hill's case showed the direct result of the fact that sexual harassment had largely only been discussed in relation to white women.
Yes.
But there was no sexual harassment.
Carl, you just did the thing! It's literally the thing that she was talking about, and you just did it. You just proved her. She's like, this just gets swept under the rug all the time, and you go, yes, but it did not happen. Fucking yeah, that's exactly the point. What? You did the thing, Carl. Why are you doing the why are you doing the thing? Oh. I am so fucking tired. I'm so fucking tired.
Unless you are going to assume that Hill is telling the truth and there is a giant white supremacist conspiracy that is opposed to having that done. And then she goes on to tell us about how...
why does there have to be a conspiracy? You don't have to conspire if you share beliefs independent of one another.
There were 700,000 slaves in 1790. By the eve of the Civil War, there were nearly 4 million. How did that happen? It was right in front of us because of all the institutionalized sexual harassment and abuse that the black women who were slaves suffered.
So many people were corralled by the idea that sexual harassment isn't a black woman's issue, she says. So many people don't understand that slavery, he read this wrong, that slavery was about institutionalized sexual harassment and abuse. There were 700,000 slaves in 1790. By the eve of the Civil War, there were nearly 4 million. How did that happen? It's right in front of us, and there are no words for it. Is he going to disagree with this?
but that's not a secret. I mean, in English public schools, I learned about that.
It's not a secret. Carl. Hey, Carl. Carl, I have a question. Carl. You learned about it in English public schools. Do you think it would be good or bad to include that in American public schools? Because I can assure you they don't talk about it. Yeah, they don't bring up slave rape statistics in social studies. They don't do it. It's not a thing that happens. How in the world? How in the world? Why does he always do this? Well, I'm an Englishman, so I know better. No, you don't, Carl. No, you don't. All your food is beige.
About the fact that obviously there's a huge amount of, the slave owners would rape the women they had as slaves.
That's not a thing they teach you in social studies in American schools.
One of the many reasons that slavery is bad, incidentally. This is not a secret at all.
It's not talked about. It isn't fucking discussed. And it certainly isn't discussed from a sexual harassment and sexual abuse lens, Carl. It's talked about matter-of-factly at best by people like this, where you go, yeah, some people rape slaves. Yeah, pretty much. And then you move on. You don't talk about how like literal chattel slavery, it's about owning the offspring. It's the same way that like farmers make like you have cows or chickens, like you need them to reproduce so they don't have to buy another cow. It's the cheapest way to get a cow is just to have two cows fuck. It's the cheapest way. And in a very macabre and terrible and horrific way, that's how they viewed slaves. And so it happened. They would either own your children from consensual sex or they'd own your children from non-consensual sex. And that was just how it worked. Either way, they owned you. It's fucking nuts. It's absolutely fucking nuts. And no, they don't talk about it. It's not discussed. So dumb.
But I guess it's being erased because we're not constantly making a big deal out of it.
Constantly? We never make a big deal out of it. We don't talk about how... When have you ever heard the following sentence in American discourse? When have you ever heard it? Never is the answer, but when have you heard this? Okay? As an actual... Here's my thesis, okay? All black Americans... right, that are multi-generational African Americans, every single one of them is a descendant of sexual abuse. Every single one of them. That's never talked about. It's never talked about. We don't think about that. It's not brought up. We should probably. It would be beneficial to discuss that. Like, come on. It just doesn't make any sense. The only time you hear about it is if you take a history class that's run by a woman. That's a fact. I've taken 3. I've taken 5. 3 of the classes were the same person, and then the other 2 were also women. But all amazing. Well, 2 of them were amazing. The other one was just kind of like fine. But I had a really good sociology teacher that was a woman that was great. And then I had an even better anthropology teacher. She was nuts, but I loved her. She was fantastic. Just seriously, just no more passion. But you don't hear about it. You just don't hear about it. You mean amongst white people? Well, yeah. I don't think black people talk about it either, though, really. That's not really a thing that comes up. Like having the conversation of like, hey, we are descendant from rape like all the time. Like it doesn't come up in these communities very often. It might come up from time to time, but it's certainly not a big conversation. And if you have if you have that specific conversation more than once in your life, in your scene, then you have a pretty dope place where you live. But you can usually only get to that point when you're talking to women that understand history, not just the black community in general. You might exist in that space, but doesn't happen.
Maybe? In the 30 years since Crenshaw first wrote about intersectionality, the term has swept to the forefront of conversations about feminism and racial justice. It is used by activists in HR training in some of the world's largest corporations. And here you see the flex. They're saying, look at how far we have come with what I would suggest is a manifestly and demonstrably racist ideology. From her own words.
It's because you don't understand it, bro.
This success, of course, is, as they say, at the heart of the right-wing backlash against identity politics.
Yes.
Because there's only right-wingers who are concerned about identity politics. There are no people on the left who are saying, well, actually, maybe these racial and gendered identity politics are divisive and are actually destroying our movement, and maybe even destroying the West as we know it. But
okay, people on the left don't talk about the West. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? The West. No, we don't talk about it like that. Because we don't care about the West. We're not here to conserve anything. So, shocker! Leftists don't care about conservation. Because guess what? The West today isn't anything like the West was 50 years ago, or 50 years before that, or 50 years before that. And it won't be 50 years from now. That's fine. That's not what it is. It's got to be for... It's so weird. It's so weird that they are against this shit. Again, did you know that society is for the people alive in it? I know, right? And if the people alive in it have a different opinion than the people who used to be alive in it, well, it just keeps on moving, doesn't it? Yes. Just so stupid. God damn you, Enlightenment.
hey, at the end of October, the term critical race theory was spoken about in the UK Parliament for the first time when Kemi Badenoch, a black woman, a conservative black woman, the Equalities Minister, announced that the government was unequivocally against fundamental parts of the concept, which is completely salient and sane. You would expect that if this is a philosophical proposition that is being put across, and there are different ways of looking at the situation, especially if you are an individualist liberal, that you would obviously and demonstrably object to the assumption that this is racism or sexism when you can see through the procedure that there is no evident racism and sexism being portrayed.
It seems pretty obvious that there was some sexual impropriety going on, though. Like, even if you still... I just don't get this. I do not understand why conservatives are like, nuh-uh, it didn't happen, instead of just going and getting a different justice for the job, or a different senator, or whatever. Like, they just go with, nuh-uh, that person didn't do the bad, and then they keep going. Like... Just get rid of, like, you keep losing those elections, like with the Ford guy. Then there was the guy down south that was like he got kicked out of malls because he was stalking girls and shit. It's like bro, if you just go like, yeah, it happened, we're gonna get a new person, fuck that guy, then just do that. You don't lose credibility by. The whole point of the confirmation process for a justice is to find out if they're shitty. And if they are shitty, then you're like, you know what? They're shitty. We're going to go get a better one. Go get a better one. You could find a conservative. Mike Pence is a great example of this. He's probably never sexually harassed a woman in his life besides his wife. He's too scared of other women. And his wife's not going to come out and say he sexually harassed me because she probably doesn't understand what sexual harassment is. Because she's been taught that she's supposed to obey her husband and shit like that. Get someone like that. I don't want him in the Supreme Court, but I can't, lie about that. And then you have Brett Kavanaugh over here who's fucking butt-chugging beers with his bros, and then a bunch of women are like, yeah, he's pretty fucked up. Why not just not choose that guy? It's never made any sense to me. Just literally do something else. Go somewhere else with it. Pick literally anybody else. Pick a lady. They don't really do a lot of the sexual harassment or so out here. It's less. It's definitely less. Sargon definitely sexually harassed people on Twitter. Does that count? Of course he sexually harasses people. Like beer, okay? God, I could go for a nice Boston lager right now. That's what I want. I want a Boston lager. I said it.
So it's good that Donald Trump has signed his executive order banning critical race theory from the federal government and other companies that are contracted by the federal government. And it's fantastic that the conservatives over here will also denounce and stand unequivocally against it. If they would then use their massive majority to take action against critical race theory and defund it over here like Donald Trump did, that would be even better. But until that happens, I'm going to give them, a B.
Thanks, Kingsit.
In September, Donald Trump ordered federal agencies to stop racial sensitivity training, quote unquote, labeling it divisive anti-American propaganda, which it is.
What's anti-American about it? What? Oh, does he mean it's anti-American in that it's not racist? True, then. Actually true. Surprise. Curveball. It actually is anti-American to highlight your racism. That's actually true. Okay, never mind. I'll retract my statement.
Crenshaw is happy to have the fight and point out how absurd this argument is. So what you are saying, what you are saying American is having structural racism. No, Kimberly. What they are saying is the procedures that America has that make up the complex structure that is the Republic is not predicated on race.
Jake, are ISIS good Americans? Yes. Okay, so it's not predicated on race. Yes, it is. Do you know how I can tell? Our communities. That's just how it is. And look, we talk about this a lot, systemic racism. That's a huge topic we talk about constantly here. Part of the issue is that systemic racism isn't an active process. You don't have to be actively racist to participate in the racism of systemic racism, which is it's kind of spooky in that way. And it can and I understand why someone like Carl, who is not a big thinker, he's got a lot of the dumb, you know what I mean? He's not got a bunch of the smart. He doesn't have much of the smart like we do. He's got a bit of the dumb. So I understand how you can be like, I'm not doing anything racist while being a cop or something. While not understanding that you're part of the racism or supporting conservatives in general that put away criminals so that your kids can be safe. That's a compelling argument, right? You love your kids. You want them to be safe. Ergo, criminals should be apart from the community so that your kids can be safer from criminals. But the criminals are just smoking joints. They don't care about your kids. They're just eating Doritos and smoking joints. You know what I'm saying? We live in a little bit different worlds here, Carl. A little bit different worlds. You have to understand systemic racism. Systemic racism doesn't have to, because it used to have active actors in it, it no longer needs active actors. You could literally have 0 racist people and the drug war would still be racist. I know. Isn't that wild? He doesn't understand how that works. Some of you may not understand how that works, but it's just perpetuating a system just perpetuating a system that specifically targets people of a certain race, and you don't even have to be actively understanding that that's what you're doing to do the thing. Racist people turned on the racism machine 50 years ago, but because they're all dead, Sargon thinks the racism machine isn't racist anymore. Yeah, it was also turned on like 400 years ago, but that's okay. That's okay. True, though. Definitely true. Actually, it was more like 800 years ago. Wow, that's nuts. More like 600. Anyway.
And so it doesn't act through the medium of race, and so any conclusions that you reach from it are not based on race, and this is how the liberal, individualist, constitutionalist, Enlightenment view comes to the conclusion that America is not a racist country.
Oh, then you're wrong. That's okay. You're just wrong. I like that he uses Enlightenment. He's like, oh, I'm a student of the Enlightenment. Are any of you... look, I'm the history guy. I'm the history guy, so you guys don't need to know when the Enlightenment was, okay? But the Enlightenment, surprise, is old. It's old. It's an old thing. It started in the fucking 1700s, bro. It started in the 1700s, before America was a thing, my friends. This is not... The Enlightenment, for those of you who don't know the Enlightenment was a sort of this, think about it like an intellectual movement, kind of moving away from the, because the 17th century and the 18th century, we sort of reclaimed what we lost through the Dark Ages from the collapse of Rome and Western civilization, and all the Eastern civilizations and the South Asian civilizations. And the South Americans, every other civilization was doing just fine. All the civilizations were doing great, except for the white one. The white ones were not doing great, but then they started doing pretty great. And we basically went from, if you ever look at Roman art is a fantastic way to look through this through a historical lens, because it's more entertaining than just listening to someone drone on. However, you can look at Roman artists like really nailing the human form. Through art, through statue and stuff like that. They have different art styles. We don't need to talk about it. Keep your Doric columns to yourself. That was for my 3 history nerds in chat. But there's different expressions of art. There's different ways that we decided that we understood how the human body works, and not just from the human body, but like philosophy in general. Like you have, all the way back prior to the Romans, you have, you have all the philosophers and stuff. You have Pythagoras, which was probably more than one person. Isn't that interesting? Pythagoras was probably an amalgam of people kind of in a group that called themselves the Pythagoreans, that really liked math and also thought that our insides were made of fire. Well, he thought that was the core element of life. And you got people like Socrates, who got murdered because they had to drink hemlock tea for asking hard questions and poisoning the youth. And also he was called an atheist. So you have thinkers all through time. And then once you get through the Roman times and stuff, especially post collapse, you have this this hard switch from this sort of like really, let's call it esoteric, let's call it art driven, really poetic, this world that Rome and the Roman Empire was. Because we think of Rome as like, a lot of people think of Rome as like togas, white columns, militaries, gladiuses, and the movie Gladiator, which is not a great movie and based on in total fiction. However, Rome spanned so much culture. Like Egypt was Rome. They like the empire. It was part of that, but they had a entirely different culture. So it's very much like the American experience, where you'd have, except the ocean was in the middle of them, the Mediterranean was in the middle of them. So you have this like melting pot situation where you have like, okay, here's our Roman culture, but also here's your culture. And what happens is you get Christianity into the fold, and also just the weakening structure in general, and then the flippy floppy of whether or not democracy is a good thing, and all that, a bunch of shit. Bunch of shit goes into this. Historians still argue why Rome actually fell, like what the linchpin was. It was all of it. But Christianity has this effect of like, we have to stop doing these superfluous artistic hedonistic activities, and you need to be devout, and you need to do this thing. You need to do the religion thing, right? And not just the religion thing, but other stuff. Crusades and stuff happened during Dark Ages. And so we start losing a lot of history. We have major fires that take down huge libraries in Alexandria. We have really big problems with plague and not understanding, because population boomed, but we didn't understand like germ theory, so we didn't understand how to deal with that kind of stuff. And so we can track literacy down. I mentioned this before. We can track Western literacy down, not worldwide literacy. Western literacy down to like a handful of Christian monks in Europe, where they were the only people that could read or write, and they were doing Bibles. Like, that's fucking crazy. They were just transcribing Bibles. And so we lost a lot of stuff. So the Enlightenment, and I know this is a long way around. But the Enlightenment is basically when we regained that spark, that moment where we came back, and humans. It was mostly English and French. French Revolution was a big part of this. And obviously the English expansion, and then Spain and Portugal are part of it a little bit too. And then you move west, and then it comes over with the founding fathers of the 1700s. You have this idea of like, we can use intellectual pursuits. We don't need this. The Jefferson Bible is a great example of this, where he takes the miracles and stuff out and just is like, here's some thesis. Ben Franklin is a great example of an Enlightenment guy. The idea was to be a master of a bunch of different things. So you get the masters of like Michelangelo. You get you get all those beautiful pieces of art that we think about all the time. When you think of the masters, you get just everything. And through this, you have this sort of Renaissance, man. This is where this comes from. Is the Renaissance? The Renaissance of art comes right back, and it's partially it all folds into the Enlightenment, the idea that we can use logic and sound thinking and understand one another and understand our place in the world, rather than using myth and other stuff. And this is a big, long-winded way of me saying Sargon of Akkad doesn't embody literally any of that. Literally none of that does he understand. He doesn't fucking do a lick of that stuff. What does he do that embodies the Enlightenment? He just called himself an Enlightenment liberal. It's not a thing he does. He doesn't use logic to try to understand his fellow man. He doesn't use the lived experiences of another person to try to craft himself an amalgam of our place in the world and try to understand more fully how we ought to live and interact with one another. He's a conservative. He conserves his own point of view, and when something is incongruent to his point of view, he sticks by it. That is the opposite of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment specifically goes out there to find answers regardless of where your bias lies. You can literally read all of, even the worst Enlightenment actors, even the worst of them, fucking Locke, even he understands or understood that, like, it was a pursuit of understanding fuller our experience as human beings on the planet. He's so vapid and devoid of actual understanding. Sargon of Akkad is a dumb person that's really good at pretending like he's smart. He's not a smart person.